Welcome to the July 27th, 5:30 p.m. City Council presentations meeting. We do have a quorum, so I'll call this meeting to order. Would you please join me in a moment of silence? And the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. City Clerk, would you please read the rules to speak?
Yes, sir. This is a City Council meeting to hear special recognitions and presentations. Council will not take any formal action on the agenda items of this meeting. All individuals wishing to speak may do so under petitions and requests from the public present. No sign-up card is required. Citizens will be given 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. City Manager, special recognitions and presentations, please.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Our first agenda item this evening is 4A. This is in the continuing series of departmental briefings, and we have Chief Histolis here to provide you a Titusville Fire Department overview, and I believe you got a video, right?
Do I have sound? Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Good evening, Council and Mayor.
Hi, how are you?
Wonderful. How are you guys doing?
Good.
I'm sitting in for Chief Woodward. My name's Operations Chief John Histolis. And without further ado, I think we'll get the video going, and I'll be available to answer questions and comment on afterwards if you guys have any.
Okay, thank you.
The Titusville Fire Department is under the direction of Fire Chief Michael Woodward. The staff is made up of 69 total personnel, 57 sworn line, 5 sworn staff, and 7 support. The overall success of our department is a direct result of the outstanding team of men and women that make up the fire department.
This year, the department was audited by the Insurance Service Office and was able to improve our property protection class rating from a Class 3 to a Class 2. This improvement places the fire department in the top 4% of all fire departments in the United States and can help reduce the residential and commercial property insurance of its citizens.
The Operations Division is responsible for ensuring that all combat personnel and equipment are ready to respond whenever the community is in need, for whatever that need is. Each one of these individuals are at minimum state-certified firefighters and either EMT or paramedic certified. However, the vast majority have specialty training that exceeds the minimum.
We have 3 battalion shifts covering 4 stations. Each shift consists of 1 battalion chief, 4 lieutenants, 4 driver operators, and 10 firefighters. In total, they responded to 9,321 calls. Of those calls, 140 were fire calls, 6,170 were EMS calls, and 3,011 calls were miscellaneous.
Training is one of the most basic yet necessary functions a fire department must complete on a regular basis. We are excited to move forward from a very challenging year. We have developed a robust training plan to enhance our current training methods and delivery. Ensuring that we make the most of each training opportunity between answering calls for service is essential.
In total, department personnel completed over 15,000 hours of training.
"66% of our calls we provide to the citizens, businesses, and visitors of Titusville are emergency medical service calls. All firefighters are medically trained in both basic life support, EMTs, and advanced life support, paramedics, so when we arrive on scene you are treated by highly skilled crews trained in everything from stop the bleeding to I'm having a heart attack."
Out of the 57 firefighters, 44 are paramedics and 18 are EMTs. In total, they responded to 6,170 EMS calls with an average response time of 4 minutes and 50 seconds.
The Fire Prevention Division plays a crucial role in the overall safety of our community by proactively working with businesses, developers, and contractors, coupled with enforcing the Fire Code, Florida State Statutes, Florida Administrative Code, City Code of Ordinances, and City Land Development Regulations, as well as investigating fires for cause and origin. The efforts of the Fire Prevention Division have contributed to a continued decrease in commercial fires within the city.
The Fire Prevention Division completed over 1,580 inspections, as well as over 320 plan reviews.
Logistics continually strives to keep our personnel safe by procuring the latest gear and equipment to maintain the highest level of safety standards when it comes to fire and EMS vehicles, equipment and facilities, as well as the purchase and distribution of supplies and materials necessary for day-to-day functions.
The logistics section supports all personnel in our 4 stations located throughout the city. Station 10 covers the north area of the city and is located on North Singleton Avenue. Station 11 covers our downtown area and is attached to our administrative headquarters on South Washington Avenue. Station 12 covers the west area of the city and is located on South Park Avenue. Station 13 covers the southeast area of the city and is located on Barna Avenue.
Public education and community outreach is key to prevention. Establishing community partnerships, visiting schools, attending local events, giving presentations, and creating content allows us to connect with our residents and visitors 24/7. Education, planning, and preparation is key to fire and life safety.
Last year, we participated in 116 events, reached over 3,000 citizens, checked 67 car seats, and distributed 26 bicycle helmets to the citizens of Titusville.
The men and women who make up the Titusville Fire Department have not stopped looking toward the future.
Through continued improvement at every level,
We strive to enhance
service delivery
to the community we serve.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. That's well done. And I think like most of us, when we think fire department, we think there's an awful lot of times you're going out on fire. I've been fortunate enough to do some ride-alongs and I get a little training, not training, that kind of training, but be educated. And you do an awful lot of medical calls. And if I'm not mistaken, because of the fact that it's a little less expensive to use a smaller vehicle, we've gotten some medical vehicles that aren't quite as, we don't have to take the big old fire trucks out every time, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Tell me what you think about, and I'm not trying to get a whole nother presentation, but that was kind of a big thing when I first got here, that we didn't need to be taking the fire trucks out to all the asthma calls or heart attack calls, et cetera. Have you found those to be very helpful? Are they quicker to get there, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. And for the longest time, 10 plus years, we've had Station 13, which has had that additional resource there, a rescue or ambulance for the layperson, that's kept the fire truck off the road running calls that are unnecessary, like medical calls, for an apparatus like that to run. Since then, within the past few years, we've put an apparatus similar to that, a squad, similar to an ambulance. It doesn't carry a patient in it, though, so it just sends medical support. We've put one of those in service at 11, and obviously it reduces the number of calls that our engines have to run, and they're just not designed to run, the number of calls that they were running. They're designed for fire, so which is inherently a lot less than the medical. Yeah.
Yeah, where I got to visualize that was at my 35 years at Titusville High School, and somebody comes to the clinic, we get a call that somebody's either having kids having a seizure or an anxiety attack or whatever it may be. And for many, many years, you guys came with the big engines. And
Right.
I almost felt guilty about the fact that we're calling you out there, and 15 minutes later, the kid's over the anxiety and ready to go, and we've got the big fire trucks out there. So I was really glad to make that change. Member Stokel.
Yep, thank you. Clarifying question. The 6,000 number at the beginning, were those calls or were those times that you guys actually went out?
So the 6,000 number is actually, it was just over 6,000.
Oh, sorry.
Not to nitpick, but
Yes.
every call counts, right?
Yeah.
So that was just medical calls.
Okay.
So if it was rescuing a duck out of a storm drain, which is a real call, that would not have been counted in there. That's just medical. It's not fire. It actually is a medical report generated on a patient.
So those are times that you guys have actually gone out, not
Right,
just-
correct.
Wow, I didn't realize that number was that high. So
Well, that represents about roughly 75% of the total calls. So.
yeah, I don't know. I think you guys are great. You guys know that. And before COVID, I was going to go visit and do some of the training, especially go on a certain like food night. So I'm still planning to do that now that we're kind of coming out of COVID.
She would do the food, wouldn't she?
Yes.
Yes.
Food night.
Vice Mayor Nelson.
I won't ask. So compared to Brevard County Ambulance, you get there quicker, correct?
Generally
maybe-
speaking, yes, we do.
I think you ought to brag and say, for once, we're
Yeah.
number one.
That's without a doubt, yes. But we
Okay.
do generally get there quicker. We just have more stations in the city than county does.
So you're number one.
Correct.
Okay.
Member Jordan.
Oh, it's my turn already. I listened to what you were saying as far as the statistics was concerned. I kind of missed, you said we were top 4%. Explain what you were saying about the top 4%.
Okay, so I was actually going to elaborate on that a little bit. I have a handful of things that I did want to elaborate on, and that was one of them.
All right.
That's the ISO rating.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It's the Insurance Services Office rating that classifies each fire department on a scale of 1 to 10. Mm-hmm. 1 being the best and 10 being obviously not the best. And we're a class 2 currently. So in the United States, that puts us in the top 4% of fire departments. It's a long-term goal of ours, but a goal nonetheless to reach a class 1. And we do have a few benchmarks we need to hit along the way, which that would put us in the top 0.5% of the country. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it did answer my question. I was trying to make sure I understood what you were saying, but it goes along with everything that you were saying, especially when you think about the number of firefighters who actually are medically trained also. We take a lot of things for granted around here because they are here.
Right.
But I certainly am appreciative that you have a focus, you have a vision of being the best that you possibly can be for your department. So it certainly is appreciated. I got to talk a little bit about inspection because it seems like I have a business, and it seems like you all are always at my business for some reason. And I'm just trying to understand why. And, I try to make sure I apply everything you all say. I mean, it's not a dangerous business at all. So why are you at my business so much?
Because we care about your safety.
You do, yeah. No, because it's one of the things I saw in there. We were checking the fire extinguishers. You just check everything,
Yeah.
and you did find a couple of things that was wrong with my business, and it was very much appreciated. And we fixed those things because you're right. If everything is working properly, if something happened, you need to make sure your equipment is properly maintained and everything. So it's really appreciated. But it really seems like you all in my building a lot. And I don't know why, but it may be because we're on a cycle, right? And then you just come at certain times to make sure everything's okay. I mean, how often are you supposed to come?
So without having those stats right in front of me, I couldn't tell you for sure how many times they've been to your specific building in the course of the past year or what have you. But generally, they're going to want to get there once a year. And if it could be more than that,
Yeah.
And I don't know your specific situation.
Yeah.
I know I'm a business owner in town too. We did have a storefront, and we weren't meeting the right standards. So because we weren't, we had to have the fire inspector come out again. Mm-hmm. So we got multiple visits out of it. And that could be the case with you. I'm
No,
not sure.
we got everything.
You got everything.
Everything's
Okay.
fine. But it really is much appreciated because, as I said, and I'm sincere about this, it's just we've got so many good things going on in Titusville, specifically with the fire department, and we take it for granted because when we call, we expect them to come for sure. And to have the training where if someone gets sick, you're right there because they're already medically trained. So it's very much appreciated.
And Member Jordan, if I could follow on with the ISO rating, what that means to our citizens is their insurance rates on their property, homeowners and commercial, are lowered.
Right.
The higher up.
And that needs to be emphasized because sometimes we forget about that. If you don't have a fire station that has the certification and everything, you could find that your insurance is it's already going up, but it keeps it lower than it would be if we didn't have those things. So very much appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Member Robinson.
Yes, I want to applaud the fire department on the job that they do for the city of Titusville. And I always like to recognize also that level of going beyond the call of duty. I have had an opportunity over the years to work with the fire department on the holiday season and all of the things that you do that people don't know, that you help so many families and so many children within our community with gifts and other things. And I want to make sure that that is mentioned as you do your presentation, because you guys do a stellar job in telling the community that you love them and you care about them.
Well, thank you very much.
And I just want to conclude by saying pretty much what's been said up here. We're very proud to have you all as our fire department. I appreciate the effort you give every day and how you guys try to get better. I've been fortunate to go to some of that little training site you got out there off of, I believe that's Barna. It's almost scary to go in there. So I kind of stay on the outside. But that being said, we're proud of you and we thank you and appreciate you, and well done on the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
while I'm here and have the opportunity, I wanted to thank you guys for being a captive audience, but I also do want to remind everybody here that it's the firefighters that are responsible for the great fire department that we have. So definitely thanks to them. I also do want to thank Carrie Lubeski and Kyle Mack for putting the video together. And of course, you guys have this great presentation to look at it, and we're painted in the best light possible. And a lot of that's because of Curtis Corwin putting the video together. So
Amen.
Thank you to those people.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. City Manager.
Yes, sir. We're on agenda item 4B, which is Mr. Jeff Davis from the North Area Park Operations Manager of the North Brevard Park and Rec Department will present the proposed FY22 Park and Recreation budget. And as part of this, we will have to accept cards, and council will vote on this presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. First off, let me get started by saying thank you to Mayor Diesel and Vice Mayor Jolyn Nelson and this board of councilmen and women. I was recently acknowledged by Mayor Diesel for a Community Spirit Award. I wanted to tell Dan how happy I was to receive that. Doing what we do all the time, we don't always get the positive accolades. You're constantly bombarded with the issues of not doing things right, but to be recognized for doing something correct, and it's really just me being me. It really did my heart good, Dan. I want to thank you so much for that award. And with that being said, let me jump directly into this. I didn't realize this presentation was going to be voted on. I thought did everyone receive an email copy of the?
Yes.
Okay. And let me read something to get us started. This is the First Amendment of the Interlocal Agreement, Section 16. The interlocal agreement hereby replaces an entirely shall read as follows. Section 16 says, upon the submission of proposed preliminary budget Brevard County, by the Brevard County Commission, the county shall provide a copy of the proposed budget which you've received. The proposed preliminary budget shall reflect the maintenance, capital improvements, programs, and other services to be offered as properties in Exhibit B. So the documents that I sent you will have that information. There are multiple parks that I'm responsible for, that we're responsible for, but I'm going to tell you there are 8 parks that are city-owned, county-maintained. The list of those parks are Blanton Park, Isaac Campbell Park, Marina Park, North Brevard Walking Trail, Sandpoint Park, Space View Park, Titusville Veterans Memorial Fishing Pier, and Wusthof Park. Now, out of those 8 parks, the acreage is about 102 acres, but the overall gamut of what we cover in the north area is about 44 parks. We cover from from 528 all the way to Scottsmore, and within that park range is 44 parks and about 1,130 acres of property that we're responsible for maintaining. What I like to do is actually have you take a look at the actual budget submitted to you. And if we don't want to go down line by line, we can, but I know for the sake of time, we don't necessarily have to. But the fiscal budget year of 2021, capital improvements, there's the Singleton tennis courts, and there's a cost and dollar amount associated with it, which is $75,000. North Brevard operations, also we have the Parish Park seawall repair, which is about $110,000, but I can't even count that high. That's so much money. $110,000. There's a Sandpoint Shade Play Area. There's $90,000. There's a Homer Powell Nature Trail, $276,000. As we get through these, if you have a question about any of these, I'll save those questions and ask those questions at the end. Nicole Park playground replacement, that came out of general fund, $140,000. Gibson Complex playground replacement, $140,000. Marina Park pavilion replacement came out of general fund, $400,000. Parish Park jet ski, general fund, $200,000. Fox Lake kayak launch, that's going to be $8,000, but out of that $8,000, that's a portion that we're paying. The other monies will be coming from our EELS, Endangered Lands department. Marina Parks, skate park and lighting, $15,000. Singleton tennis courts, restrooms, and a new parking lot paved, be $400,000. Samford Community Center playground replacement, $150,000. Sandpoint Park pavilion replacement. That's the new pavilions, all of those small pavilions, not Valencente. We're estimated at about $629,000 because we plan on building those with material that won't erode in the salt water. Space Coast Community Sports Complex, $115,000. Stewart Park Pavilion replacement, $30,000. Woostall Pavilion installation, $100,000, and Woostall Playground installation, $140,000. So as you see, we're spending a lot of money on doing a lot of positive things, and it's the 8 parks that we're servicing, along with the other 30 plus odd parks that throughout the North area. Any questions?
Member Sokol.
Yes, 2 of them. One, you said the jet ski for the Parish Park. Is that in conjunction with the improvements that are being made? Will that be a jet ski launch?
Jet ski launch. And that's along with the other improvements that are already coming.
Okay, because I know when we were voting on that, there was a concern for that, so I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
That's great. And then the other one, to clarify, I think you said Singleton tennis courts. Are you guys going to be paving? Because I know right now I don't think there's any paving for parking. Is that what I heard correctly?
Yes, ma'am. New bathrooms. I'm not sure if you've been over there.
Yeah.
Recently. The restrooms definitely need an upgrade. So new restroom facilities as well as a park paved area. Because right now you need a truck to drive in because of the road.
No, I know. So are these all slated to be completed within a certain time frame?
They're slated for our 2021 budget. So within the 21-22 budget. So within that time frame, that year's time frame, we're hoping to get that money spent. Understanding that it's just a proposal. Things could happen. We're hoping that everything stays on track and we can accomplish these things that we placed in as far as our budget, our mission for improvements.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great. I see you every year come, and you always, I feel like, really focus on what the community needs during that time, whether that's events, whether that's infrastructure. So seeing this, I feel very excited about it, and want to say I appreciate you and everything you're doing, and I think it's going to be a lot of good and improvement for our community.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I would simply add that, Mr. Davis, Jeff, I'm very pleased, as you know, with the efforts that you make, the responsiveness that you have to our city. I think that may be the biggest thing as the liaison for the city on the Parks and Rec Board. It's been awesome to be there and to discuss and give concerns from the city. And I know when you and I first got together, when I first got elected in 2016, we sat down and talked about the fact that we're doing a great job with some parks, but we need some activities. And I think the focus on activities has been tremendous. It's been a rough year for activities last year, but at the same time, you guys are always looking for something. So I can't say enough good things. And, as far as the award goes, that had everything to do with what you've done. Your responsiveness, not just in your job, but every time we need something, and sometimes it's got nothing to do with Parks and Rec. So I appreciate it. Any other comments from council? I see none. Cards, please.
Stan Johnston.
Go ahead and sit down, and then you can come right back up as soon as we get on with cards.
Stan, that's a minute and a half. Stan, you didn't even turn around and look at me on that one. All right, name and address.
I'd like to be happy. Stan
Yeah,
Johnston.
you can do all that.
Stan Johnston. I'm here, and I'm not real happy. No, I'm not. Because when I look at the agenda packet for this particular item, nothing's there. Nothing's there.
Thank you.
There's, in other words, there's no agenda, there's no budgeting thing, so I couldn't review it. But I started writing down some things like 410,000, 276,000, so forth like that, 200,000 jet ski, 629,000 for the pavilions and so forth like that. And these are several $1 million. And so I'm handed you something right here. This is a handout, and this is one of the signs that's on that photo of that handout. And we've got some other signs about fraud and so forth like that. On the back of this handout, here I gave you, it's got 1 through 7. And this has to do with our park, Sandpoint Park and Spaceview Park, and that is the sewage spray. In other words, when we spend millions of dollars, why can't we just turn off the spray and stop the fountains and stop spraying people with sewage? I talked to Mr. Davis, and Mr. Davis had me go to the Garden Street office and at there to show them my car that had sewage spray on it, and I got a trespass warrant that's still active. So I think that we're going, when we're spending over millions of dollars on these improvements, we ought to stop spraying people with sewage. I think it's the important thing to do. I can't understand why we spray people with sewage. And cars too. It doesn't do them any good. As a professional engineer, I even made up signs. I contacted, Mr. Maurice, he won't listen to me, but I contacted it. And so, and not only that, is that at the same time is that we dump sewage into the river. That's on here. This on this picture. We dumped sewage into the river. We said that we didn't, but we did anyways. But we got all kinds of witnesses and photos and videos dumping sewage into the river. And this is supposed to be our sort of like a nice thing to have, this Indian River. But we dumped sewage into it, millions of gallons of it. But we didn't admit it. Mr. Larice won't admit it. And of course, I called up people and said, please come and see it. So I'm asking y'all to be straightforward about what's going on here and stop spraying people with sewage for 4 months and stop putting sewage into the river secretly. So that's what these handouts are for. I'm about out of time, but I think I can ask for 2 more minutes. I got about 9 seconds because I think y'all should answer these questions about why. Why did the city of Titusville?
That's your time. Anybody want to extend?
Nobody wants to.
I see none. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other cards? All right, Member Robinson.
Yes, Jeff, as a person who have been around a day or two, and I am glad that you're working hard to get our parks and keep them up. And I hope that you motivate our young people to start spending more time at the parks like we used to do when I was young. That was a thing that we went to all of the parks and just sat out and had a fellowship with one another, was friends with one another, and back in those days. And I hope that that began to happen. And part of that is the fact that will help that the fact that you are keeping the parks up and making them more friendly and more usable than they have been in the past. And I want to thank you for that. And let's continue to work to get the people out to use the parks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Member Robinson, I don't see anybody else. Can I get a motion to accept this report?
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson? Yes. Member Stokel?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. Keep up the good work.
Thank y'all for all that you do. Thank you.
All right, thank you. City Manager.
On to item 4C, which is at Council's request. Dr. Lisa Soda The Executive Director of the Marine Resource Council will provide a presentation on low-impact development, and there's no action required on this one.
I'd also like to note, because we've got two back-to-back reports, and when we agreed to hear an extra report, we asked that it not be one of those 37.5-minute reports. So we're really trying to keep these within 15 minutes, because as soon as you're done, we have another
Yes,
one.
sir.
So thank you so much for being here. I've heard many great things about you, and I look forward to hearing your
Thank
report.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and council members, for inviting me up here today. My name is Lisa Soto. I'm the Executive Director of the Marine Resources Council. And I really came up to thank you for taking such a leadership role in Titusville with considering a low-impact development ordinance. I understand there's going to be one before you next month. Considering a tree protection ordinance. You've got one of those in the works. So these are moving towards low-impact development. So you're taking a leadership role, and we appreciate that. And we're here to help you. So MRC is out collaborating right now, lagoon-wide, covering every community from Ponce Inlet down to Jupiter Inlet, trying to work with local communities, local leaders like yourselves, to get the resources in front of you to really understand the change that needs to be made to protect the Indian River Lagoon. We've just handed out, Joni Regan is on my board of directors, and she was the stormwater manager for Cocoa Beach for almost 3 decades. So she's got a lot of experience and on-the-ground design implementation criteria for LID. So I brought her along. She can do much more than hand out brochures. But what she provided you is our latest report card, which you're probably familiar with already, showing that although we are experiencing still a failing grade in the lagoon, we have seen some minor improvements over from one year to the next. We went from an F to an F+, so that's good news. But there's a lot, we've got a long way to go. Anybody that's been in school knows going from an F+ to a B is a long way. We've got a long way to go, and it's going to take us a long time to get there. So dealing with our stormwater as the #1 contaminant to receiving surface waters is going to be key to bringing our lagoon back to health. And this city is critical to the lagoon. We recognize your importance to the region, the great work you've already been doing. You truly embrace the space and nature concept here in Titusville. You're the gateway to space, literally. And if you've ever heard from our friend Dale Ketchum at Space Florida, he talks about his vision of making the lagoon a beautiful, clear body of water again. Because when those people come back from Mars and they see Earth for the first time, where are they landing? Right here. They're going to be looking at that lagoon, and they're going to be coming through your city. So that's a pretty incredible vision that we share, that you embrace here. So thank you for that. So low impact development. So my background, before I came to MRC, I was at UCF Stormwater Management Academy. It's in the College of Engineering, and this is an engineering realm. So why is an ecologist there? Because I'm an ecologist. Because about 20 years ago, they figured out they cannot gray infrastructure engineer their way out of our stormwater problem. They needed to use vegetation and landscape and trees. And who do we need to figure that out? Some ecologists. So they invited me to be part of the team. I got to work with some of our state's leaders, Marty Wanalista, Eric Livingston, Harvey Harper. I mean, these guys are the guys who created the stormwater rule, which is now getting to be 30 to 40 years old, that did the hard work to drain our state so we could build on it, okay? They figured out 20 years ago, draining and getting the water away as fast as possible was killing the water quality. We needed to slow the flow and get the water back in the ground. Not only is it going to protect water quality, it's going to protect our drinking water because we need to get the fresh water back in the aquifer. So that's where I came from. My expertise in LID really comes from rubbing elbows with the people who are the true experts. And I would suggest that Joni is another one of those. She's done it. She's got the engineering background. I'm an ecologist. I just got to work with these awesome guys and to try to understand really what the challenges are to implementing it. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So if okay, they've already started the website. So I didn't do slides. I just figured we'd put the resources that we have on our website up, and then I'd walk you through them. So for decades, we've drained huge volumes of stormwater directly into our coastal estuaries. Most of the watershed is privately owned. So typically, 90 to 95% of a local government's land is under private ownership. And so local government has had to deal with stormwater management in the tiny little 5 to 15% public land, right? So that's where conveyance systems fit. So there's not enough land to deal with stormwater management. We need more land to get the water into the ground. We need more land to clean it. The initial 1980s stormwater regs pushed all the runoff to downstream treatment areas where on site there were limited treatment capabilities. And frankly, these undersized and outdated treatment areas aren't working. So our lagoon has not been improving over the past 30 years. It's been getting worse. Many of the ponds that are used just become eutrophied kind of generators of algae that overflow and feed algae into the lagoon. So our systems are failing. We're not maintaining our stormwater management systems that are in place, and they're actually polluting now. So that's an issue. FDEP acknowledges that these conventional systems are not working. They're currently working on revising the rule. They're working on a statewide stormwater rule right now, which makes it that much more important for local governments to get conversant on this topic and get your local ordinances in place, because there's a chance, and actually the way things have been going at the state level, a pretty good chance that they'll preempt you as soon as they pass a statewide rule. So if it's not suitable for your community, you may not have a choice but to accept whatever they come out with. So watersheds across the state have stepped up and improved their ordinances and created design and engineering manuals to save their estuaries and to save the springs. A lot of people are implementing LID more from the perspective of aquifer protection and drinking water protection. And I understand you have a well field here for drinking water. So that might be a goal to consider here. Even as key goals, in addition to the stormwater quality improvements that it's made. We're in our third major development boom in this watershed right now. We have the Apollo boom, the shuttle boom, and now we've got the SpaceX, Blue Origin, military, and so on space boom happening. So we know development and redevelopment is rapidly going to start increasing more and more. This is the key time to try to modify the way things are being put out there at the time as development is going to start to crank up. Low impact development uses nature, uses tree canopy to reduce runoff volume. If it doesn't hit the ground, it's not stormwater. So that's the very first defense, is your tree canopy. You've got awesome trees in Titusville. You need to protect those. Those are your first line of defense for stormwater, and they're awesome tools for management. So the tree canopy, if it doesn't hit the ground, is not polluted stormwater. So it reduces your downflow rates, your pollutants, and it ultimately reduces the problems with eutrophication. We know they're trying to treat downstream. There's too much water. Once the water enters the storm system, it's moving too fast and too furious to try to treat and get the contaminants out. There are existing model codes. There are great manuals that are in place. He's going to eventually get to there in this. And the website, they're all on our website. So it's important to be consistent throughout the watershed, which is why MRC is working from Volusia County down to Palm Beach County to try to get consistent application of low-impact development manuals in place so that developers know wherever they're building, everybody's going to have the same kind of criteria. So there's a lot of reasons why this needs to happen. The costs can be, at the smaller scale, they can be cost savings if it's centralized, underground infrastructure, et cetera. Smaller scale, it can be more costly. But the trend over the past couple of decades is to build bigger homes, more impervious. So there's just all of the trends are pointing to we need to make a paradigm shift. So you understand, I think you've heard from your staff. Your staff has done a great job of versing you on what low impact development is. I didn't feel like I needed to come here and go through slides and slides and pictures of LID. So you understand what it is. And that basically, actually on the website, if you could scroll down to how does LID differ from typical stormwater management practices now, and then put in that graph. Yeah, perfect. So what you're looking at on the screen there is what we call in stormwater management a hydrograph. And the big tall peak is what happens when a storm occurs and it goes through a typical stormwater convention system. You get this big slug of millions of gallons of polluted water that no system can deal with. It's just the system is a giant pipe. The giant pipe feeds the polluted water into a pond that overflows or the lagoon itself. Those baffle boxes and things like that that take out trash and large particles cannot deal with the flow. Trust me. Those are not going to be effective tools. So how do we get that? The dotted line on the graph is the amount of stormwater the watershed can handle. So low impact development is about reaching that line. You don't want to exceed the line. You want all of your water to end up back in the aquifer the way it was designed to do in the first place by God, by nature, by Mother Nature, whoever you think that is. So there's so what does stormwater do? It reduces that peak flow, and that peak flow is what floods. That peak flow is what's going to erode. The peak flow is what pollutes. So reducing the peak flow is key. That is it. If somebody else can figure out how to get rid of the peak flow, that's what you need to do. The engineers have figured it out. It's called low impact development, and we just need to get it done. So reducing pollution, reducing flooding, reducing volume, recharges the aquifer, improves soil health, encourages redevelopment, protects floodplains, prevents saltwater intrusion, ultimately increasing coastal resiliency, which is important. So who benefits? Everyone. If you could scroll down to the who benefits part of the website, please. And then let's scroll up a little bit to the list right there. Beautiful. Thank you. So everybody benefits from implementing it. It is a paradigm shift. It's going to take an institutional change. And that's where you come in. You're an institution. So the world we have created is, hold on, I got to get this right. This is Albert Einstein. The world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. So we need to change the way we've been thinking about stormwater. It's not just about, getting the water away from the property as fast as you can. It's about slowing the flow and getting it back into the ground. So the state's working on this right now. I mentioned we want to get ahead of that because we want to be conversant in providing input on the state rule. You want to send somebody, to their rulemaking, and that person can provide input on what you're doing here in Titusville. We are a resource for you. The best way for you to proceed, I think, is to come up with your goal. What do you want to accomplish? Different communities, and these are all on our website. We have examples of what others in Florida have done. Pinellas County they really wanted to redevelop. Pinellas was completely built out. If you're going to redevelop in Pinellas, they had to figure out how to deal with stormwater. Redevelopment is what they wanted to encourage. So LID, redevelopment is low impact development, is the only thing you can use in a lot of redevelopment neighborhoods because there's no room for ponds, right? So their code and their stormwater manual is really about rezoning, mixed use zoning, increasing zoning densities, enabling redevelopment of areas by enabling developers to put more units there if they use low impact development. Incentives. You got to put these incentives in place, but you got to figure out what your goals are before you start incentivizing what you want them to do. Alachua County's goal, for a different county, Alachua County, they wanted to incentivize new development. So very large comprehensive planning effort in Alachua County. Their stormwater LID manual is inclusive of LID coefficients. They created their own coefficients for their own county, and they created their own engineering criteria and how they're going to credit LID as part of their treatment training. That's all another incentive technique to get your engineers to use it, to get people to use it. Escambia County got ripped up by Hurricane Ivan, a decade ago or so. And coastal resiliency. So they did LID for coastal resiliency. We want to protect our vegetated shorelines. We want to reduce up gradient flooding, and we want to raise our buildings. So raising buildings on footers like we used to, years ago, is an LID technique. Winter Haven is my favorite right now. They've done 5 manuals from gray to green is what they're calling it. And they came up with a whole nother way of quantifying the volume of stormwater. I mean, depending on your community, you need to figure out what you need to accomplish and how do you incentivize it? How do you enable developers and builders to come in and make as much money as they would have otherwise while, accomplishing your goal of aquifer recharge, coastal resiliency, water quality improvement. Think through the vision. What do you want those people to see when they come back from Mars? Do you want them to see a beautiful clear lagoon in a beautiful town that made it that way? Or do you want to see, what you want to see what it looks like out there right now where there's a lovely bloom I see. So what are your goals for this? I mean, these are things, I don't know, that you can just, I don't know if you're having these conversations with your staffs. Is it aquifer protection? Is it coastal resilience? You want to get the lagoon clear again? I know you've got a couple of ordinances you're considering. I suggest you proceed, and then whatever you pass, you continue to move forward. This is the beginning of a long process, and we're here with you. You start with a tree ordinance. You start protecting your canopy. That's your first line of defense. Now, what about parking lot sizes? What about using pervious materials? How are you going to comprehensively plan your entire watershed? Are there riverine areas that you need to protect for coastal resiliency? I'm sure you probably have a well field that you're protecting right now. So, areas that you want to protect and you want to recharge. That's something that you should think through as you proceed with your efforts with low impact development. So I just wanted to make you aware that we are, I'm not an expert. I'm bringing the experts. I've got lots of friends that are experts. We've got some fantastic people that have offered to come and assist us. We're doing the Low Impact Development Conference October 21, 22. It's right here in our community in Rockledge at the Collaboration Center. We're bringing some of the leaders, not only in the nation, but the state here. We're bringing Pinellas County, Alachua County, the University of Florida, and Winter Haven. They're all going to come talk about their manual making, how they did it, the process step by step. And then ideally, everybody is working, we're all working in the lagoon watershed together on how can each community address their need by incorporating low impact development into their land development. Sorry. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. Member Robinson, is that an old line? Do you have a question? Any council member have any question? I thought you got a lot in there quick. And I don't know how you did it, but you hit right on the 15-minute mark. I don't think you even knew. Thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure.
City Manager.
Yes, sir. We're on item 4D, which is staff presentation on low impact development, and no action is required. And as you're aware, the actual low impact development ordinance will probably slide towards the end of September or October.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. My name is Eddie Galindo with the Planning Department, and I want to start by saying it was really unfair of you to have the epic fire department video to start us off tonight, because the rest of us just can't compete with that. That was great. So the purpose of this presentation is a refresher, because we are going to have the LID ordinance come to City Council in the next month. We're going to touch on the timeline. How did we get to this point? Some of the research that we did on other communities' LID ordinances, and talk about some of the details in the ordinance that you'll see next month. There it is. It's kind of faint, but starting on the left, in August 13th, 2020, the TEC was provided information from staff about what LID is and some options, and the TEC made a recommendation to City Council then to encourage. Thank you. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the TEC recommended to City Council that Council adopt an ordinance encouraging low impact development. Following that, at the Planning and Zoning Commission, the same information was provided to the Commission, and they decided to recommend requiring LID and to have that ordinance completed and adopted by January 2021. And then following that, we asked Council for advisability, and you all provided information, were provided information about LID as well, and decided that the way forward would be to encourage LID through incentives. So since then, staff has been working on drafting that ordinance, and we've brought it to both the TEC and P&Z. And so just to provide you an update on that, on June 9th of this year, the TEC reviewed that ordinance and recommended approval with modifications. The modifications included removing all of the incentives and changing all mentions of the word encouraged to required. Following that, the ordinance went to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which also recommended approval with modifications. And the changes there, were to accept all of TEC's recommendations, adding a whereas clause, and then to require that at least 50% of all stormwater on a site be processed through an LID technique. So just a quick summary. Obviously, this is a lot of information, but these are just some of the communities that we looked at when we were trying to decide how to move forward with implementing LID here in the city. You see the community names on the left. All of the communities obviously at the very least, encourage LID through their land development codes. Some of them go a step further by providing incentives. Some of the incentives include an expedited application or additional parking incentives. And then finally, on the right-hand side is the communities that required LID. Of those communities at the time that we did the research, only Walton County required LID, and that was for their coastal dune lake protection zone. It's an ancient lake near the ocean. And what's interesting, though, is that in Walton County, they consider buffers and impervious surface limitations, which are things that we currently have in our current code that apply to all of the city. They consider those techniques to be LID techniques. So that was just a summary, some background information, and now diving into kind of the substance of the ordinance. Since council provided that advisability to recommend, to encourage LID through incentives, none of the LID is required in the ordinance. However, we did add a requirement that all developments for all subdivision plats moving forward and all site plans provide an analysis assessing the capability of LID on a site. So it's not requiring that they use it, but they need to demonstrate how it could be used and maybe why not implement it on the site. The largest section of the ordinance is this LID BMP list, best management practices, and those are just the different LID techniques. And they come in 3 different categories. The first is the site planning BMPs. Those are the very first step, your planning steps. So like, for example, deciding that you're going to cluster your subdivision instead of spread it out across the whole site. And that way you can preserve some open space. That's an example of an LID technique that happens early on in the development process. Next, we have the source controls BMPs, which minimize the amount of stormwater that's being added and channelized to the system. So as an example, rainfall interceptor trees that can store the rain and prevent it from becoming stormwater helps to minimize the amount of stormwater that has to be managed. And then lastly, the structural stormwater BMPs. Those are the engineered solutions. Those are the bioswales, the rain gardens, the things that have to percolate the stormwater. So since council asked us to develop some incentives, we developed quite a few, and they come in 3 categories: parking, open space, landscaping, and buffers, and then other. For parking incentives, some of the ideas were to allow for satellite parking. For example, if you are required to have 20 spaces, but you wanted to develop 10 spaces on your own site and borrow 10 spaces from an adjacent site that maybe has some underutilized parking, that reduces the amount of impervious surface that's having to be developed to accommodate the development. And to do that, you have an agreement in place. There's also reduced curbing. So curbing is a way of channelizing stormwater. It's also used for preventing vehicles from entering a landscape bed. And by reducing the amount of curbing that's required, you can allow for the stormwater to be directed towards these landscape islands so that the landscape islands themselves can act as stormwater retention instead of having curbing all around it and have it be an island where the stormwater can't infiltrate. Some examples of the other incentives in the open space and landscape category include allowing BMPs in the buffer. So currently the code doesn't allow for stormwater management systems to be permitted within a landscape buffer on the edges of the perimeter of the property. But the idea is that if some of these BMPs include vegetation, like a bioswale does or a rain garden does, then they're not visually impactful and should be allowed within the buffer. And by doing that, you're allowing some flexibility on the site so that things can be shifted to allow more room for the development. Another example is to reduce building setbacks. If, again, just trying to add more flexibility to the code so that we can accommodate these techniques, because in most cases they do take up a little bit more land area. And then some of the other incentives we identified included expedited applications process, allowing wet ponds outside of the area of critical concern, and then reduced stormwater freeboard. Freeboard is the engineering requirement from the surface of the water of the retention pond to the top of the system is how much distance vertically has to be maintained. And we currently require more than what the Water Management District requires. And so there was an idea that we could increase flexibility by reducing that distance, which would require less of a volume within that stormwater retention, make it smaller, and allow for some more flexibility on the site. And then lastly, some operations and maintenance, because we want these systems to not just be installed, but to function as they age. And so we would require a maintenance covenant, requirements, and annual inspections so we can make sure that the maintenance is being done and that these systems continue to operate in perpetuity. And then looking ahead, so tonight we have this refresher presentation. August 10th is the current schedule for first reading, and August 24th, second reading and public hearing. That's it.
Council. Member Jordan.
I am totally confused.
Oh, no.
I'm going to tell you why I'm confused.
Sure.
Because Ms. Soto got up here. Is her name Soto? I think she got up and she talked about incentives, which makes sense to me because it costs more to do some of these things. And then you do a presentation and show the incentives, all right? And TEC is saying, let's not do incentives. I don't get that because anytime we're doing some changes or modifying, you're talking about a developer who's spending a lot of money. And if you don't have incentives for them, then it's going to be real hard for them to say, yeah, I'm going to do this and lose my money just so somebody can be happy. So we got to be real careful about, government intruding on someone's land. We've all said that we like LID, but if you don't have incentives, then you're not going to get a lot of developers who want to play the game, if you will. The other thing I was confused about is one was about setbacks, all right? Reduce the setbacks. There might be a tree there. So how do you handle a tree versus trying to make sure you're doing your LID development? It just seems to me that there's a lot of things we have to be careful of. You get all these requirements on a developer of making sure you reserve the trees, making sure you have pervious surfaces, and before you know it, you don't have a development. And that's not helping anybody. So I just think we should use common sense when we're doing this and make sure that we don't govern these developers out of doing anything which is not going to help the city economically at all because they'll go someplace else to do their development. Good presentation, but I just saw the contrast of what Ms. Soto was saying. Let's give them incentives to do these things so we can have LID, but the Environmental Commission say don't give them anything and make them, it's required. That makes no sense to me at all. Just my thoughts. Good presentation, though. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, I thought it was a good presentation as well, and I thought Ms. Soto leading off, the two of them come together, and I think we get a little bit more. And I will say, for those who are watching, these aren't the only two presentations we've ever heard. I can tell you in my 5 years, I bet it's been 6 or 7. And, and it's important. It's important, and it's a tough call. I said all along, I said it last week, that, compromise is an important thing, environmental and economic. And this isn't pointed at anybody, but let's face it, we all like compromise until it doesn't go our way. And we're going to have to all work together to make this work. I think are you wanting to say something? No? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And good presentation all the way around. And City Manager.
Yes, sir. Next to the last item is item E, which is the Community Development Department staff. Mr. Tim Ford will present the Explore Historic Titusville booklet, website, and mobile application. No action is required.
Hi there. I'm here to inform you about the new Explore Historic Titusville booklet, website, and mobile app, hopefully in less than 5 minutes. The Titusville Historic Preservation Board was awarded a $30,000 small matching grant from the Florida Division of Historical Resources to create the historic booklet, walking, driving tour of the city's historic resources. This project uses history and architecture as an economic development tool for the city, similar to like the cities of Savannah and Charleston, South Carolina. No money match was required of the city since the city is a certified local government, which means we meet state criteria because we have a historic preservation ordinance, a historic preservation board, and a historic preservation officer. The consultant Coherent Associates, LLC, was awarded the contract from 4 bidders to create the walking, driving tour booklet, website, and mobile app of our historic resources. Coherent is a consultant of two people. They're located in Branford, Connecticut, and they've done similar work in the United States and in the Caribbean. Project also involved our community relations staff, our IT staff, and our planning staff in a team effort. Just to show you, this is an example of the web page at history.titusville.com. There are 4 time periods involved and 5 walking, driving tours. It has a GPS interactive map and audio recordings. There's over 53 landmark sites with 22 architectural gems or houses. And there's approximately 30 audio recordings with interviews from locals, both present and past, that came out of the Brevard County Archives. This went live around the 1st of June. Here's an example of the mobile app. Self-guided walking, driving tours direct people to highlighted spots on the the GPS-enabled map. Provides stories, historic images, and vivid narration of each location with audio stories involved. And then here is some screenshots of the mobile app showing the different pages that you can get to. And then a little bit about CurateScape. That's a website and mobile app that uses CurateScape as a framework for the location of location-based content. It's hosted and managed by Cleveland State University. It's for free for 2 years. And then afterwards, it's $300 per year, or we can just bring it back into the city's website. CurateScape can be described as an affordable, user-friendly platform that allows small to mid-sized organizations to connect to communities and audiences. And it was created to help with the help of the Center for Public History and Digital Humanities. So it provides exposure for people searching for historic info, and it's used by quite a few cities and regions, not only in the U.S., but in other places of the world. Just a little background on the consultants. Neil Silberman is an author and heritage professional, and he specializes in public interpretation of historic sites. And Dr. Angela Labrador is a cultural anthropologist specializing in digital heritage tools, basically electronic media, websites, mobile apps, and audio recordings. So anybody that wants to download the mobile app, you type in Explore Historic Titusville, either at the Apple iStore, for those that have iPhones, or for Androids, you go into Google Play. And then lastly, the Historic Board is creating a 4-inch by 9-inch rack card that includes the URLs or the addresses to all the city's electronic historic resources, such as the Historic Preservation Board webpage, the city's GIS, Historic Titusville story maps, and then the 2 items that we talked about tonight, the Explore Historic Titusville webpage, and then there is a QR code that will take you to the mobile app to download the mobile application. So thank you for allowing me to provide this update, and thank you for your support of the Historic Board to allow them to do these kinds of things.
Well, thank you for your presentation, and thank the Historic Board for this movement. I have the booklet, actually. I am going to work on my computer skills to do the app, and I think that would really be cool to follow along and have someone tell you the story. I've been here a long time, and I can tell you there's a lot of stories that I don't know. So I look forward to that. Any other comments from the council? All right, thank you very much. We move to petitions and requests from the public. Front row.
Stan Johnson. And I want to let everybody know here who's interested in the Indian River, the Save Our River, is that we're having a public forum tomorrow at 5 o'clock. That's Wednesday at 5 o'clock at Sandpoint Park near the river along Max Brewer Causeway at one of those small pavilions. So we're going to have a public forum to save our river and also a prayer time. And we certainly need prayer because it seems like nothing else is working. I have this handout that I gave you about the Indian River. And it's disappointing when I see it because some horrible things the city has done. It talks about what the sign I showed you, the sewage spray, and it shows also another sign that December the 22nd asking about this right here, and that's a photo. It's a photo of sewage running from US 1, and it goes into a culvert, then it goes directly to Spaceview Park. The pond at Spaceview Park doesn't like overflow to the river. What it is, it's directly connected to the river. What happens is we have wind tides in the river. And when the wind tides gets high, water goes into this Indian River Lagoon, goes into Spaceview Park Pond. And it discharges. So I've personally seen this happen. Water goes in and out. So what the city did, this is unbelievable what the city did. I don't think anybody's going to believe this. The city pumped that pond. They pumped it and pumped it. Do you know what they were pumping? They were pumping the Indian River. The pond never went down. And they put tanker trucks at great expense. They sent it to the city sewage wastewater treatment plant. Now, does that make any sense at all? Wow. I mean, that's almost as much a sense as spraying people and cars with sewage. So that's number 4 on here. And you can see that we certainly need prayer about, does anybody have any common sense here in Titusville about the Indian River Lagoon? It's a dead zone. And we talk about stormwater. Well, I don't have much time. I just think that we need, I'd like some people to join us tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And maybe it'll be more prayer than anything else, because we're in a bad situation. The river has been a dead zone, not for a year or a month or 2 years, but it's been for needlefish, for seahorses, so forth. May I have another 2 minutes?
I see none.
Okay, thank you.
Next. Petitions or requests from the public. Anybody else?
Yes, my name is Kay St. Ange, and I live in Titusville. Thank you, Dr. Soto and Joni Reagan, for speaking on behalf of the Marine Resource Council in regards to low-impact development. The Marine Resource Council has been devoted to protecting and restoring the Indian River Lagoon since 1983, engaging communities to have a positive impact on the lagoon. As the Marine Resource Council's Indian River Lagoon report card indicates, stormwater runoff pollutes the lagoon when it carries litter, animal waste, oils, and grease, fertilizers, and pesticides into the lagoon. Titusville's economy depends upon a healthy lagoon to attract tourists and new homeowners, including those in the aerospace industry. A study indicated the economic value of the lagoon in 2014 was $7.5 billion. But since then, ongoing algae blooms have killed the seagrasses, resulting in starvation death of over 300 manatees in Brevard County. An unhealthy lagoon impacts the health of residents as well. The lagoon will never be healthy as long as polluted stormwater is being dumped into it with every rainfall, per the Marine Resource Council. LID would allow for more house sites on property. I'm going to say that again. LID would allow for more house sites on property once needed for large, ineffective stormwater ponds. These ponds will be reduced in size and number per FDEP if developers utilize LID to avoid soil compaction, allowing rainwater to percolate into the soil. Developers will save the expense of building curbing and stormwater conduits if allowed to use swells instead. LID can save developers significant construction costs and allow for a greater return on their investments. Developers should want to build LID because they will get a greater return on their investments. If given a choice, will developers choose to develop LID, or will they continue their old, ineffective stormwater management practices? Adopt an LID ordinance that will significantly reduce pollutant loads from new and existing developments into the lagoon for the sake of our economy and for the health of our residents. Thank you. Any questions?
I've seen none. Thank you, Ms. Kay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any other petitions or requests at this time? I see none. City Manager, anything? All right, let's go ahead and start the next meeting at 6:55. This meeting adjourned.